September 15, 1967. Oro 600 hours. Northern Quang Tri Province, Vietnam. Lieutenant James Coan stands in the cupola of his M48A3 tank, watching dark clouds roll in from the South China Sea. The air is heavy, electric. The kind of morning that makes every Marine in I Corps look up and mutter the same word: monsoon. It starts as drizzle. Within minutes, it's a downpour. Great splashing buckets of rain cascading down. The kind of rain that doesn't just soak you, it drowns the world. Coan's worried. His tanks are trapped on a narrow strip of crushed stone road. Off the hard top? That's rice paddies. Soft earth. Mud that can swallow a 52-ton tank like quicksand. He's about to discover something the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army had counted on for years. When the monsoons came, American armor stopped. Or so they thought. The enemy calculation was simple, logical, based on hard experience with French armor in these same killing grounds 15 years earlier. Steel plus mud equals immobility. 52 tons of M48A3 tank becomes a sitting duck when monsoon rains turn solid ground to soup. Rice paddies become lakes. Roads become rivers of mud. Visibility drops to nothing. And tanks, those thundering symbols of American technological superiority, become elaborate coffins. The NVA and Viet Cong had watched the calendar, waited for September. October, the months when Vietnam's 128 inches of annual rainfall concentrates into relentless downpours. When the Kratchen, that cold, miserable drizzle, makes every breath feel like drowning. This was their window, their advantage, the great equalizer against American firepower, or so they thought. Let's talk about what the enemy believed in September 1967. Northern Yang Corps, Leatherneck Square. That 6-by-8 mile rectangle of hell bounded by Con Tien, Gio Lin, Dong Ha, and Cam Lo. Ground so contested that Marines gave it a name that sounded like a boxing ring, because that's what it was. Alpha Company, 3rd Tank Battalion, is scattered across this landscape. Platoons supporting infantry operations, sections running convoy escorts, individual tanks providing fire support at isolated outposts. And the rains come early. The NVA commanders in their caves north of the DMZ make their calculations. September through March, that's monsoon season. Peak rainfall, roads impassable, vehicles bogged down. They'd seen it before. January 1966. A Marine tank company operating near the coast. The company commander pushed his luck. Pushed his tanks deep into rice paddy country. Everyone kept telling him the rains were coming. We're out here in rice paddies. We'd better get the hell out of here. He waited too long. The monsoon hit. The whole company, stuck, trapped, going nowhere. It took 3 days to move 400 yards. 3 days. Engineers had to fly in timbers by helicopter. The tankers laid the heavy beams in front of the tracks, rolled forward, recovered the timbers from behind, laid them in front. Again. Over and over. Brutal labor. Shortage of rations. Constant threat of NVA attack. The misery was unimaginable. Normally, tank crews slept on the engine deck or turret. The steel stayed warm from the 750 horsepower diesel. But trapped tanks? The crews had to sleep inside. All that steel would cool off at night until you were freezing. Then come 9 or 10 in the morning. The sun turned the buttoned-up tank into an oven. And when it rained, the damned thing leaked. Here's the twist that makes war absurd. The stuck tanks were actually the safest. 2 tanks that weren't immobilized were sent ahead with a squad of infantry, moving into a position about 500 meters away. That night, they got hit. The mobile tanks drew the attack. The stuck ones? The NVA ignored them. Because what threat is a tank that can't move? That was the logic, the calculation, the enemy doctrine. Monsoon equals safety from armor. September 15th, 1967. The day everything changes. Lieutenant Coan has orders. Take a light section, 2 tanks, and escort the mine sweep to C2. Daily routine. The road needs to be cleared. The grunts need protection. But he can't find the engineers. He's delayed. An angry staff officer from 3-9 chews him out. Finally locates the sodden engineers. They all set off down the road in the downpour. Coan knows what the rain means. His tanks are, quote, for all practical purposes trapped on the narrow strip of road covered with crushed stone. Off the road means stuck. On the road means vulnerable. Between those options, not much room for maneuver. The crushed rock road supports the tanks nicely, for now. They're moving through what used to be farmland. Rice paddies on both sides. The grunts slog through liquid mud beside the road. Every man's clothing sopping wet despite ponchos and rain jackets. Visibility is terrible. They're ripe for ambush. And then they encounter something that makes Coan's gut clench. 2-9, an entire Marine battalion, moving south in 2 columns along the road. The vacant eyes stare out from muddy, unshaven faces. They plod numbly onward, not looking right, not looking left, not caring. Coan thinks, a procession of cows coming in single file from pasture. These men have been out here for days, fighting, dying, surviving. Halfway to C2, they reach Rocky Ford. It's not much, just a stream crossing. The engineers had installed large steel culverts, so vehicles no longer had to ford the water. 2 massive corrugated steel conduits under the road, designed to carry the runoff. But the culverts aren't adequate for this rain, this volume. A lake has formed on the upstream side of the causeway. Brown water jets out of the downstream ends of the culverts under tremendous pressure. The roadbed looks sound, but Coan eyes that lake with professional paranoia. They cross, carefully, flanked by infantry, from the Marine battalion. The tanks make it. The crossing holds, for now. The convoy continues to C2, refuels, turns back. An hour. Later, they return to Rocky Ford. Things have changed. Part of the causeway fill has collapsed. But grunts from that long E29 column are still crossing, hustling across the damaged span, getting to the other side. Coan confers with his driver, Ken Piggy Bors. 1 year's experience driving in Vietnam. If anyone knows what a tank can and can't do, it's Bors. They reach a conclusion. Now or never. Coan climbs back onto the tank, turns to grab his helmet from the gypsy rack, that steel mesh bin on the back of the turret. The infantry passengers riding on his tank are clearly terrified. They know something's wrong. The tank starts to move, and the fill bursts. An explosion of mud and water. The massive steel culverts, each one designed to support a tank, are hurled end over end into the air like toys. Where the causeway had been is now a 100-foot wide roaring flood. Coan realizes in horror some of the grunts are being swept away. Most are rescued. Men grabbing tree branches, swimming, clawing their way to banks. But 1 corpsman is missing. Gone. Swept downstream in the brown torrent. The grunts are frantic with grief. And Lieutenant Coan's tanks are cut off from Con Thien. From this moment forward, Rocky Ford has a new name. The Washout. September 18th, 1967. Coan's tanks sit at C2, waiting. The rain continues. They're joined by a blade tank that got trapped on the wrong side of the flooded Cam Low Bridge to the south. The whole company is scattered, stuck, trapped. September 22nd. The weather breaks. Slightly. A jeep appears from the south, followed by an M51 tank retriever, that hulking 60-ton monster with a 1,000-horsepower engine and a lift boom that can recover anything. The exhausted officer in the jeep is Captain Jacobson. He's got news. All bad. Lieutenant R.B. English's 5th Platoon tanks mired in flooded fields near Con Thien. English was medevaced out with an injured back. Despite major efforts, one tank is still stuck. Another section is mired outside Geo Lin. Quote, "The company's tanks were trapped or buried in mud all over the operational area. The mission is simple. Escort the retriever north, recover the stuck tanks, get everyone back to fighting shape. The problem? The NVA had been busy during the rains, laying mines along the unswept road. The column heads north. Coan's A-11 leads. The massive retriever follows. A-13 brings up the rear. At the washout, they debate how to bypass the washed-out causeway. Find a crossing point. Coan's A-11 goes first. Makes it across. The retriever follows on a parallel track. Also makes it. Then Coan's driver, Dubose, makes a decision. Despite Coan's warning, he cuts toward the hardtop. The solid road surface. Boom! A mine tears off 2 road wheels from A-11. A-13 crosses the stream, following the exact tracks of the vehicles ahead. Surely those tracks are safe, right? Boom! Second mine. Now A-13 blocks the ford. The retriever trundles off to recover English's stuck tank, leaves Coan and 2 inexperienced sergeants to fix the damaged tanks. One sergeant is a former Amtrak crewman. The other is new to Vietnam. They're working under brutal conditions, soaking wet, exposed. A sniper takes shots at them. They crank off a dozen rounds from the .50 caliber machine gun. The sniper gets discouraged. Hours pass, backbreaking labor, changing road wheels, repairing track, in the mud, in the rain, knowing the NVA is out there watching. Before dark, the retriever returns, brings the recovered 5th Platoon tank with it. Good news, bad news. Coan's tanks are still stuck. Then someone makes a decision that turns bad into catastrophic. One of the 5th Platoon tanks decides to cross the stream. Not at the ford, upstream. Figures it'll find easier passage. The tank plunges in, takes water over the bow, floods the driver's compartment. But the tank is tough. 52 tons of American steel. It starts clawing its way up the far bank. 30 feet from safety, the engine stalls, and the tank, majestically, almost gracefully, rolls backward, comes to rest in a cloud of steam. Engine deck awash in the stream. Now they have 3 tanks stuck, and the retriever trapped. The senior officers confer. Check the schedule. An ARC Light B-52 strike is planned for this area. Tomorrow morning. They can't risk keeping men here. Can't risk the vehicles when bombs are about to fall. Captain Jacobson looks at Coan, delivers the order. Take your men to Con Thien, on foot. The crews disable the tanks, strip the weapons, drain the fuel, distribute their food, including a precious case of fresh apples scrounged at C2 to the ragged, starving grunts providing security. God knows they need it worse than the tankers do. Then they march. In pitch dark night, rain still falling, each man holding the belt of the man in front because it's too dark to see. A harrowing journey. Miles through enemy territory, no weapons heavier than rifles. Tank crewmen trained to fight from inside steel, now exposed and vulnerable. They stumble into the lines outside Con Thien. Spend the rest of the night sleeping in the mud with 2 9s grunts. During the night, 2 tanks from C2 manage to drag the 5th Platoon tank out of the stream. But they can't cross to recover the others. and the NVA finds the abandoned vehicles. RPG teams move in, pump numerous rockets into the disabled tanks. Target practice. The distinctive crack whoosh of RPG launchers echoes through the night. September 19th. Morning. Coan arrives at Con Thien, covered head to toe in mud, toes to thighs, fingers to elbows, looking, quote, like some sort of prehistoric swamp dweller. The road to Con Thien has been churned into the consistency and color of devil's food cake batter, knee-deep, semi-liquid. Tank tracks have transformed solid earth into chocolate soup. The final accounting comes later. A-13 is eventually recovered. A-11 is written off as a total loss, though later dragged away. The enormous M51 Retriever is burned, out, never recovered. It sits there, a monument, a 50-ton steel tombstone. The company gives the disaster a name, the Washout Fiasco. Here's what the Viet Cong didn't understand. The washout wasn't the end of tank operations in the Monsoon. It was just another day. Because across northern Iron Corps, in rice paddies and on muddy roads, in flooded fields and washed-out crossings, the tanks kept rolling. That same September, another platoon gets caught in a flooded rice paddy. Overnight, the ground turns to muck. The tanks sink nearly a foot into rain-softened earth. The situation is desperate. Morning comes. The tank commander makes the call. Take it slow and easy. Don't turn it. The driver applies pressure carefully. The 52-ton machine lurches, treads churning, white smoke billows. Water pours from the air cleaners, but it moves. Inch by inch, they extract themselves from what could have been another disaster. This is happening everywhere, daily. The maintenance burden is crushing. Sand clogs air filters. Humidity causes algae growth in fuel tanks. The algae clogs fuel filters. Engines quit. Crews have to purge fuel cells, pump off 5 gallons onto the ground just to keep water out of the system. Track tension needs adjustment daily. Hit a mine? Lose 10 or 12 track blocks. Replacement parts are scarce. Crews cobble together repairs with whatever they can scavenge. But the tanks keep rolling. September 16th. The day after the washout begins. Lieutenant Coan is ordered back out. Morning mine sweep to C2. In the downpour. Despite everything that happened yesterday, he can't find the engineers again. Gets chewed out again. Locates the sodden engineers again. They all set off. Again. Down the road in reduced visibility. Perfect ambush conditions. Infantry slogging through mud. Lost in their own wretchedness. But self-discipline, ground into them at boot camp, forces them to scan the tree lines. And the tanks provide security. Can't maneuver worth a damn. But the guns still work. The enemy is learning. Weather doesn't stop the guns. Late March 1969. Van de Grift Combat Base. Far western edge of the 3rd Division's operational zone. 1st Platoon, Alpha Company, 3rd Tank arrives. And that's when the monsoon really hits. Before conditions deteriorate completely, the platoon supports an infantry sweep into a valley the tankers call the Tank Graveyard. That name should tell you something. The valley is horseshoe-shaped, trackless, filled with dense brush. The lead tank spots an NVA soldier running. The tanks move deeper into the valley, find bunkers, a hospital complex, destroy it all. Then one tank throws a track in a bomb crater. Delay, repairs, vulnerability. The column starts back. Moving along the trace, they knock down through the brush, approaching a right-angle turn where the path climbs toward higher ground. Lance Corporal John Wendling is driving the last tank. His platoon commander, Lieutenant Paul Tank, actual name, is in the tank directly ahead. It's a nice day. Weather has broken briefly. Wendling thinks, if anything happens, I've got an M79 grenade launcher in the driver's compartment. Then he sees Lieutenant Tank spin around in his cupola. The 50 caliber machine gun swings, opens fire. Wendling looks right, sees an RPG team running through the brush. His tank commander, turn right, turtle, turn right. The tank lurches off the trace, 50 feet in, then backs up. The commander is trying to find a position with open field of fire, and an RPG team runs directly in front of the tank, point-blank range. Gunner, canister, enemy on ground. The loader grabs an M338 shell, flips it, jams it into the breech, yanks his hand clear, screams, up! On the way! The 90mm gun speaks, and 8,000 steel flechettes, tiny steel darts, spray from the muzzle at supersonic velocity. The RPG team doesn't even get a shot off. They're shredded, cease to exist. 3 tanks, 3 separate RPG teams converging on them. The enemy had set up a coordinated ambush, in monsoon conditions, thinking the tanks would be vulnerable. The infantry dismounts from the tanks, engages, more fighting. The captain on the hilltop radios down, another RPG team waiting at the bend in the trail, under an isolated tree, perfect landmark for an ambush. The tanks line up, fire high explosive rounds at the position. Okay, you got him. Then A-6 intruder aircraft work over the valley. They come down low, eye level with the Marines on the hilltop, release their bombs. High drag snake eyes that seem to float in slow motion before detonating. Shrapnel from the close air support pings off the tanks. The column withdraws to Vandegrift. The lesson is clear. The NVA expected weather to neutralize armor. Instead, they faced operational tanks delivering canister rounds in impossible conditions. January 15, 1969. Da Nang area, Aero 200 hours, a pitch-black night. The kind where you can't see your hand in front of your face. Sergeant Bartusevich and his 2nd Platoon Heavy Section are enjoying a rare night in the rear. Cold bucket showers, mess hall raid, maybe some actual sleep in a tent instead of on an engine deck. They're waiting for the next infantry unit. Routine. Should go back out in an hour or two. Then, Aero 200 hours, the world explodes in the distance. Mortars, artillery, automatic weapons fire. A runner from the Combat Operations Center sprints into the tent. We gotta have the tanks. Company's getting overrun. The senior NCO is indisposed. Bartusevich takes charge, rouses the heavy section, 3 tanks, ready to roll in 5 minutes. But they have to wait for the infantry. Standard procedure. Tanks don't go anywhere without grunts. 15 minutes pass. 20. The firing in the distance is growing heavier. The sky is lighting up. Bartusevich runs to the COC. Give me one of your radio operators. The tanks don't have encrypted radios. Need a Marine with a separate unit. He loads up the radio man behind the turret, leaves instructions for the grunts to follow on Amtraks, and takes off, into the darkness, toward the sound of the guns. 3 tanks, racing to save a company. When they arrive, the perimeter is breached. An elite NVA sapper battalion has hit the Marine position. These aren't regular troops. These are specialists. Bartusevich sees them in the illumination from flares and explosions. All they're wearing is shorts. Skin slicked down with oil or grease. Tiny jockey shorts. 5-pound satchel charges. AK-47s. RPGs arc through the night on all sides. Orange trails with showers of sparks, like fireworks. Deadly fireworks. The compound is littered with Marine bodies, dead, wounded, fighting for their lives. Bartusevich gives the order. Use your machine guns. Don't button up. I don't want you running over any wounded Marines. The tank commanders stay exposed in their cupolas despite the danger. Better visibility, better fire direction. Training takes over. You're almost like in a trance. You're just trying to keep yourself alive, trying to keep your tank running, keep firing. The tanks run over attackers. Some NVA stand directly in front of the tanks and fire. Don't even try to move. Drugs? Fanaticism? Doesn't matter. The tanks crush them. Some try to board the tanks while they're moving. The loaders are out of their hatches with rifles, picking off sappers trying to climb aboard. Then Bartusevich has an idea. Turn on the searchlights. The big lights mounted atop the gun tubes blaze on. Brilliant white light cutting through the darkness. His logic. The searchlights would blind them. When they're shooting at the searchlight, they'll shoot high or low. It works. No tank crew casualties. Bartusevich spots a structure near the center of the compound, most heavily reinforced with sandbags. I figured that was the command, CP. An enemy machine gun is laying down fire on the bunker from a nearby position, tents and sheet metal. I told my driver, get your head down and floor it. The tank charges. The enemy machine gun rakes the hull. Bartusevich returns fire with the .50 caliber. They crash directly through the position. The machine gun crew isn't moving. Can't move. Crushed. The fire slackens. An infantry sergeant emerges from the command bunker, jumps on Bartusevich's tank. There's an OP outside the wire that got overran before they hit our position. I think they're all dead. Can you go take care of them? One tank is sent out through the wire, into no man's land. 2 wounded Marines are found alive. The relief on their faces is visible, even in the darkness. Then a green flare goes up from outside the perimeter. The NVA withdraw, pull back into the jungle. Bartusevich thinks the enemy commander must have been uncertain how many reinforcements were coming. If he'd known it was only 3 tanks, he might have kept fighting. 3 tanks saved a company, in the middle of the night, in monsoon season. Let's talk about what it cost. Statistics from Alpha Company, 3rd Tank Battalion, September through December 1967. 2 mine incidents per week, average. Multiple tanks, total losses at the washout. 1 M51 Retriever, a 60-ton machine worth more than all the tanks it was trying to recover, burned out and abandoned. Countless damaged vehicles, wounded crew members, some killed. The corpsman swept away at the washout was never found. Lieutenant English medevaced with a back injury. Piggy Boers, the experienced driver who made the now or never call, took shrapnel through his hand, nearly sheared off his knuckles. Medevaced out. Some tankers got mild trench foot after several days and nights, spent out in the rain and mud. Mild, that's the official term. For feet rotting inside wet boots for 72 hours straight, sleep deprivation, exposure. The psychological toll of constant artillery, constant mines, constant ambushes. But the mission was never compromised. Supplies continued to Coan. Mine sweeps were maintained. Infantry was supported. The enemy was engaged. The NVA learned, adapted. They'd assumed monsoon equals no armor. Reality forced adjustment. They increased mining during the rains, positioned more RPG teams at likely stuck points, brought artillery to bear on vehicle recovery operations. Tank Commander John Ware remembers recovering a tank that fell into a B-52 bomb crater, working under NVA artillery fire. Heavy shells. Constant. He describes it as the most terrifying experience of the war. Just because you're all by yourself. It could land on you, or it couldn't. Thousands and thousands of these things. They just wouldn't stop. Loud, huge, like a freight train. You're absolutely helpless. But they kept working, got the tank out, kept the unit operational. This is the difference the enemy never understood. Weather was supposed to protect the NVA from armor. Instead, it just meant both sides fought in misery. But only one side refused to quit. September 1967 was a critical month for Marine operations near the DMZ. Coan was under siege. Supply lines were threatened. The NVA was massing for an offensive. Both sides tried to exploit the weather. The NVA used it for cover, assumed it would stop armor, planned their operations around seasonal windows. The Marines, they accepted the conditions, adapted, continued the mission. Leatherneck Square operations proved tanks could function in monsoon conditions. Not easily, not without losses, but they functioned. The strategic implications were huge. The NVA couldn't count on a seasonal window anymore. Couldn't assume autumn and winter meant safety from armor. Had to position anti-tank defenses year-round. Had to expend resources on preparations even during monsoon season. Through 1968 and 1969, monsoon operations continued. Each year, Marines got better at it. Better recovery techniques, better preventive maintenance, better tactical employment. But it was never easy, never safe, always brutal. The maintenance burden alone was crushing. After each operation, crews faced a nightmare. Mud clogging tracks, moisture requiring constant lubrication, guns cleaned and oiled daily, ammunition wiped free of moisture. Lance Corporal Wendling. The inside, climbing in and out, you were muddy all the time. You had to wait till the weather broke to really clean them. Then massive cleanup required. Hours and hours of work. Rubber seals and gaskets leaked. Parts were scarce. Improvisation was constant. But the tanks kept rolling. Every day of operations in the monsoon was an answer to the enemy's assumption. Return to where we started. Lieutenant Coan at the Washout, September 1967. 4 days stuck in the mud and rain. 3 tanks and a retriever lost. Covered head to toe in brown sludge. Sleeping in liquid mud. Eating cold sea rations. The most disastrous tank operation of the monsoon season. But not the last. Not even close. Because here's what the Viet Cong and NVA never understood about American tankers. Being stuck didn't mean being beaten. The enemy made a calculation, a physics equation. Steel plus mud equals immobility. 52 tons times monsoon conditions equals neutralized threat. They were missing a variable. 4 men who refused to accept the equation. The difference between their calculation and reality came down to will versus weather. When that tank company got stuck for 3 days in January 1966, moving 400 yards over 72 hours, the enemy thought, see, weather wins. They didn't see the Marines laying timbers, over and over, back-breaking labor, freezing in steel boxes at night, cooking in steel boxes by day, soaking wet, exhausted, hungry, but moving forward. 400 yards, inch by inch. They didn't see Lieutenant Coan going back out the morning after the washout disaster, running the same mine sweep, on the same road, in the same rain. They didn't see Bartusevich racing 3 tanks into the darkness to save a company. Didn't see Wendling's crew firing canister rounds at point-blank range during an ambush in a monsoon-soaked valley. They saw the tanks get stuck. They saw the delays, the recoveries, the maintenance nightmares. What they didn't see was what happened next. The tanks kept rolling. Here's the truth the Viet Cong were right about. The monsoon's dyad make tank operations nearly impossible. Here's what they got wrong. What nearly impossible meant to Marines. 52 tons of M48A3. 12-cylinder, turbocharged, 750 horsepower diesel engine. 90mm gun. And 4 men who wouldn't quit. That was the equation they never solved. Across northern I Corps, through the autumn of 1967, diesel engines kept roaring in the rain. The monsoons came. The tanks rolled anyway.